So this is the PowerPoint lecture for the former research paper, and the topic is on single-sex colleges making a case for transgender. Remember, from the English assignment sheet lecture that you do not necessarily have to agree with transgender, but remember that this type of concept and issue will cross your leadership desk. In addition, because transgender applicants are appealing to single sex colleges to essentially accept them or consider them for acceptance, then you would have to look at the argument concerning what single sex college applicants are interested in, what the how the policy has changed for certain single sex colleges. And so that should also help you to be able to make a case for transgender. And of course, you cannot make a case for transgender, and you will not receive any point deductions or anything like that. So this is a former research paper lecture, single sex colleges making a case for transgender. So all of your readings are housed on eCampus classroom discussion handouts. So I will bring in some handouts because of in class only exercises. And so just know that everything is already housed on eCampus as well as hyperlinked. So this is the introduction, and you need to know the distinction between a regular academic essay and an argumentative essay. So let's look at the difference. You're going to see two types of different two categories of slides. You're going to see the individual, what an academic essay looks like, and then of course the argumentative essay looks like, and then the actual side-by-side comparison. So for academic writing, you usually have an introduction paragraph and a thesis statement, as all papers, formal academic papers, need to have a thesis statement. And then you have 3 to 4 body paragraphs, could be more, of course, and those topic sentences support the thesis statement. And then you would have supporting evidence, which may take the forms of examples, facts, data, quotes, paraphrases, summaries. And then, of course, there's proper, appropriate MLA citation. And then there's the conclusion paragraph. So in a thesis statement, with a regular academic writing paper, you always have a thesis statement and you're always proving, but you're not necessarily building an argument. That's the difference between regular academic writing in terms of essays and then an argumentative paper, which we're about to see now. So in argumentative writing, you are actually building an argument. So you still have the same structure, which is introduction paragraph with an arguable thesis statement, 3 to 4 body paragraphs or more. Of course, the topic sentences will always support the arguable thesis statement. And then there's a claim, counterclaim, evidence, rebuttal. And this is where you're now building an argument. So there's the claim. The claim is anything that's on the topic, that is said about the topic. The counterclaim is anything that opposes the claim. The evidence can be used for claim, counterclaim, or rebuttal. And then the rebuttal basically suggests that the counterclaim is wrong. So someone says one thing to you, you say one thing to one person, they oppose what you say. Either you're going to believe what they say, or you're going to come up with a rebuttal to end what they say, or to say what they're saying is wrong. And so ultimately, your paper should end on your rebuttal. And then, of course, the supporting evidence could take the forms of examples, facts, data, quotes, etc. And then you have your conclusion paragraph. So here's a side-by-side comparison. So there's the academic writing, then there's the argumentative writing. And you note that there is a difference, even though we may have the same structure. In one type, you are just regularly proving your thesis, and in the other type, you're actually building an argument. Again, a claim is what the argument asserts, attempts to prove. A counterclaim is any opposing claim. The evidence is information used to support a claim or counterclaim. And then the rebuttal would be a statement used to contradict evidence or a counterclaim, proves that the counterclaim is false or wrong. So in other words, you need to end on your own argument. If you believe that single-sex colleges are obsolete at the beginning of the essay, then you can't get to the end and basically say, well, I think I don't really think, I think we really do need to keep single-sex colleges. I know I said at the beginning that we don't need them, but I really think we need to keep them. Then you just lost your argument. You don't believe what you begin with at the at the beginning of your essay. So you have to remember your own argument. So here's an introduction to the writing prompt. There's going to, right after I give you the writing prompt, there's going to be some dissection of the writing prompt as well as uh, uh, other information. So this is still the topic, single-sex colleges. So here's your writing prompt. Women's colleges, once common in the United States, have been going coeducational in increasing numbers in the past 40 years. Many people argue that women's colleges are unnecessary now that all of the major United States colleges and universities are open to women, but others, citing studies that show that graduates of women's colleges are more successful than women who graduate from co-ed colleges, argue that women's colleges still have much to offer. Are single-sex colleges obsolete, or do they still provide an important alternative to co-ed colleges? Support your position with reasons and or examples from your own experience, observations, or reading. So that's your main prompt there. Everything else is just setup. So let's look at the prompt structure. So every prompt that you encounter within the academic setting has topic setup, question, and then directions. So we already understand what the topic setup is. This is the topic of single-sex colleges, and that there are some who argue one thing, and then there are others who argue another. And then the question is, are single-sex colleges obsolete, or do they still provide an important alternative to co-ed colleges? So always look for the question within the prompt. And then your directions support your position. That tells you that for this type of essay, you have to take a position, you have to choose. And then you bring in reasons and or examples from your own experience, observations, or reading. So you may not necessarily have um, experience with single-sex colleges, but you also might have been in a single-sex environment as well. So you can use that as your experience. So let's look at the question. So the question is, are single-sex colleges obsolete? And then there's a big or there. And do they still provide an important alternative to co-ed colleges? So when you are dissecting a writing prompt, always pay attention to your fan voice. That's your for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. And then what that or is telling you or suggesting to you is that you must choose. You must choose one position. Now, when you look at the different arguments on this topic of single-sex colleges, you're going to have those arguments that oppose, those arguments that support, and it may get a little confusing about how you should bring them in. Just remember your own argument. Your argument is same-sex colleges are obsolete. And so anything that agrees with you is like matching sock to sock. And anything that does not agree with you is like matching something else. But just keep that in mind. You still have to choose a position. So let's look at the writing prompt, the different arguments. So you have the many people argue argument, and these are the people who say that single-sex colleges are unnecessary now that we already have more than enough colleges out there that accept women, right? In terms of this argument, meaning that all colleges are the most colleges are predominantly co-educational. So why do we still need to have single-sex colleges? Well, these are the many people argue represent opinions on the topic. They're biased, scattered, no research. They're non-scholarly, meaning that there hasn't been a survey. No one has really conducted a survey. It's just a person having an everyday conversation with someone on the phone. And these are the people who actually believe single-sex colleges are obsolete, but they don't have anything to back it up other than their opinion. But then when you look at the other side of the argument, but others citing studies argument, then these are the people who have surveyed, measured, had a research question, um, produced results, data, qualitative, quantitative data. And these are the ones who cite that graduates of women's colleges, these are the results. Graduates of women's colleges are more successful than women who graduate from co-ed colleges. And they argue that graduate colleges or women's colleges still have much to offer. So these are their conclusions. They surveyed researchers, they're scholarly, and they believe that single-sex colleges are not obsolete, meaning that we still need them. So you will have a thinking routine. This PowerPoint includes many of the activities that you will have to complete. So this is just quickly sentence, phrase, word, and you are responding to the prompt. Okay, and the sentence, phrase, word is which sentence was meaningful to you, that you felt captured a core idea in the writing prompt. Share your sentence, explain your selection. Which phrase moved, engaged, or provoked you? Share your sentence. And then which word captured your attention or struck you as powerful? Okay, and then you will submit those responses via eCampus. Okay, then let's look at some pre-writing outlining your position. Look at a sample student's thesis. So, for instance, you have to make sure that you understand what your position is. So, for instance, if you have a yes answer, meaning you think same-sex colleges are obsolete, meaning that the interpretation is you are pro-co-ed against single-sex or SS. So then your answer, your thesis would be single-sex colleges are obsolete, they are unnecessary, they do not provide an important alternative to co-ed colleges. That's a yes answer. That's a yes answer to the prompt question. Or a no answer would be the interpretation you are pro-co-ed, pro-SS, single-sex college. Single-sex colleges are not obsolete. No, single-sex colleges are not obsolete. They are necessary. They provide an important alternative to co-ed colleges. So the person is not necessarily arguing that co-ed colleges are not important. They're just saying, they are suggesting that the role and the purpose of single-sex colleges are still important to our society. So then here's a sample argument thesis. So same-sex colleges are not obsolete. In fact, they still provide an important alternative to co-ed colleges. Then the topic sentence would be same-sex colleges provide a specialized curriculum. All right, so here is a sample argument. So same-sex colleges are relevant today because they offer a specialized curriculum. And Mount Holyoke is one of your required sources. So Mount Holyoke, an all-women's college, still to this day contends that its college prepares women for leadership in all fields and on all continents. Mount Holyoke offers a rigorous education compared to co-educational institutions. However, many experts believe today that it is the co-educational environment that best prepares college graduates to be competitive in a 21st century changing environment. So now we have a counter argument. We have a lot of the setup with Mount Holyoke and their claims, and now we have a however or a counter argument. Although co-educational institutions may prepare graduates for the workforce, it is in the single-sex college environment where women are exposed to role models who look like them and are in fields dominated by men. That's your rebuttal. So even though the however makes good points, the although in this particular paragraph rebuts that however. The single-sex college environment prepares women in particular to enter fields such as medicine and science unlike any other institution. And that is you supporting your initial claim that Mount Holyoke, for example, is a college that prepares women for leadership in all fields and on all continents. So let's look at that sample argument. The topic sentence would be single-sex colleges are relevant today because they offer a specialized curriculum. Then the claim is Mount Holyoke, an all-women's college, still to this day, contends that its college prepares women for leadership in all fields and on all continents. Mount Holyoke offers a rigorous education compared to co-educational institutions. Then a counterclaim would be a big however. However, many experts believe today that it is the co-educational environment that best prepares college graduates to be competitive. So they're basically saying, sure, okay, the single-sex college has its merits, but if students want to really be prepared for a co-educational environment, they need to attend a co-educational school. And then the evidence is used to support the claim. So evidence can be used in both the claim and counterclaim. And then the rebuttal would be is to prove the counterclaim wrong. So although coeducational institutions may prepare graduates for the workforce, it is in the single-sex college environment where women are exposed to role models who look like them and are in fields dominated by men. The single-sex college environment prepares women in particular to enter fields such as medicine and science unlike any other institution. So in dissecting this sample argument, you see the difference between the topic sentence and what the claim would be. The topic sentence should support your thesis. So then now you look at claims on the topic and you take evidence from the actual source material. So the source materials in this particular example would be Mount Holyoke. And then whatever is going on with Mount Holyoke, if you disagree with Mount Holyoke, then that's your counterclaim. But if you don't disagree with Mount Holyoke, then you're still sustaining a claim. So that means you have to find a counterclaim in order for you to be sure that you build an argument. And then, of course, evidence can be for claim, counterclaim, or rebuttal. And the rebuttal should make sure that you sustain your argument. And your argument is not only your thesis, your argumentative thesis, but the claims on the topic as well. So let's look at women's colleges and integration. And these are some case studies: Oberlin, Vassar College, Mount Holyoke. So, a brief history about the colleges for girls. So, there's the onset of colleges for girls began in the mid 1800s, and certain schools like Mount Holyoke converted to colleges. So, they were initially just schools for girls, and then they remained as finishing schools initially, serving as an alternative to college, because usually women were not necessarily prepared to go to college; they were prepared to be homemakers. And so when Mount Holyoke came on the scene, they were like, okay, let's offer women a serious collegiate education similar to that of men's colleges. We're just not going to have them sit up in a classroom and just look pretty. We need to make sure that they have some clue about what it means to have a serious collegiate education. And then that's when they required colleges to pass a rigorous admissions test and promoted high standard of curricular achievement. And that's usually in science and math. And so Georgia Female College in Macon was the first college chartered to grant degrees to women, and it was the first school that used the term college. You cannot necessarily use college without state approval. Sometimes I think federal approval. Okay, they also offered a year-long preparatory program, and then they adopted the name Wesleyan, and this allowed them to grant the first degree to a woman. Two African American women were granted degrees, and then it is still in existence today. Private female only college for undergraduate education, private co ed college for graduate education. So when you download the PowerPoint, you'll be able to click this link. And so then we have Oberlin College in Ohio. It is a private liberal arts coeducational institution founded by a group of abolitionists. They were chartered. The college was chartered on September the 2nd, 1833. It is the oldest coeducational liberal arts college. It was one of the first to admit women, and women were not allowed still to take courses that were really designated for men, but they really could not. They were not really admitted to a baccalaureate program, a bachelor's degree. But it was one of the first colleges to admit African Americans. A black student earned a bachelor's degree. A black woman earned a bachelor's degree, and then you can click the link once you download. Vassar College is a pioneer for high quality women's education and liberal arts education available to the women elite. So these are the ones who could pay for college. They come from brand names, larger, names, Rockefeller, uh, Carnegie, those types of names. And it was founded by Matthew Vassar. It was the first college to maintain academic quality in a curriculum comparable to men's colleges. So the administrators were mostly male, professors were female, students were from America's wealthiest families. So it reflected an elite background. That means you couldn't get a scholarship through those institutions. Uh, and the assumption was essentially that poor students could not live up to high academic standards. And then Vassar did go coeducational in 1969, and they have offered a policy on transgender students in the classroom, transfer from campus. So make sure to download and click those links. And so, founding of the first chapter of Phi Beta Kappa at Vassar, the seminar method, which is a notable approach to learning, which allows students to teach from original source materials. A lot of the materials that we get now through institutions are just copies of copies. And so Vassar was one of the first institutions that brought the original manuscript of someone to the classroom. And it was the first college to include a museum, teaching collection, large breadth of concentrations, opened its doors to men in 1969, and it was the first all women's college to become co-educational. So let's look at Mount Holyoke, liberal arts college for women, one of the seven sisters colleges. It's along the lines of the Ivy League institutions. Founded by Mary Lyon, it was initially a female seminary. It received a collegiate charter in 1888, and then it became Mount Holyoke College. It was initially for middle class girls. So whereas Vassar was for the wealthy, the elite women, this is this school was for the this college was for middle class girls 17 years of age. So that means still poor kids could not attend even Mount Holyoke. And so the curricular emphasis was on math and science, and female students actually have to take 7 courses in math and science. And then there's a transgender students uh, link as well. So gender segregated all male colleges, all colleges that did not allow women to receive a baccalaureate education, or any college that allowed women, but education were segregated by gender. These were private, non-religious, 4-year all-male colleges. Wabash College is one of those colleges. Hampden Sydney, Morehouse College, and then Williams Free School of Mechanical Trade. So these are your all-male colleges, gender segregated. So Hampden Sydney Liberal Arts College, all male. It is still all male today. Um, Founded in British colonial America, 10th oldest college in the nation. Founded after the Declaration of Independence, and there's a founder, and then you have different links here. They have offered a policy on transgender. We do not admit men who were not born as male. Okay. Morehouse College is private all male liberal arts, historically black college, so it's part of the HBCU line of colleges, founded by William Jefferson White, one of two historically black colleges to produce Rhodes Scholars, the alma mater of Dr. Martin Luther King. And so you have different links here. Morehouse has adopted a transgender. Initially, it did not consider transgender students. Now it has changed its policy on it. So let's look at Title IX legislation. This is the road to gender equity in higher education and the events leading to enactment of policy. So the Victorian era belief systems of the 1800s basically guided a lot of the decision making when it came to the development of single sex colleges and the perception of how women were viewed in terms of their contrast to men intellectually. So men and women viewed as having different intellectual capacities towards learning. Worries included that women would suffer nervous breakdowns if they had to compete with men. This is something that the men perceived of women. College would contribute to the corruption of women and cause them to lose purity. Female reproductive systems may be harmed. So if a woman is sitting in a college classroom, the suggestion is the Victorian era belief system suggestion is that her female reproductive systems may be harmed as a result of her learning. Learned women are not fit for motherhood and to be a wife. And then education might cause friction between men and women. They might begin to find each other less attractive. That's much more of a believable statement than all of the others that preceded, because if you have two different people in the house who are going after education and trying to go after advancement, it is going to cause friction. Everything else is just nonsense. So the source of this information is National Women's History Museum, the history of women in education. If you type that in as a title, you should be able to search the information. There should be a link on eCampus, but many of these websites have changed their structure, so you may not find it exactly how I found this. I started teaching this way back in, I don't know, 17, 18, 2017, 18, right? So a lot has changed since then. All right, married women not wanted, marriage bars, and the status quo. So if you were a married individual, you had to give up your job. So teachers quit their jobs when they got married. That was the expectation. And remember, these are Victorian era belief systems. And there was no formal law enforcing the practice, but of course there was social stigma. So early 1900s to 1950s, school boards and firms would fire single women who got married, and they would refuse to hire married women. One of these situations was case study Lucy Banks Johnson. So she's the daughter of President Johnson, and she was refused readmission to Georgetown University School of Nursing after she got married. Okay. Also, women not admitted to University of Virginia case. So Virginia state law prohibited women from being admitted to the College of Arts and Sciences. Female and black students could attend summer teaching institutes. So keep in mind, there's a difference between how you are admitted into an institution. You can be admitted as a regular student fall and spring, um, which are normal semester admissions. But if you are admitted to a summer teaching institute, you are not admitted into the university proper. And so that's the difference here. And woman passed an examination, earning a certificate in mathematics. And then change came as a result in 1970. And I feel like the change really came because Lucy Banks Johnson could not regain entry. And I think that could have been one or more of the catalysts. So let's look at the University of Virginia case. So there's a suit brought by four women compelling their admission to the College of Arts and Sciences. So remember, they were only admitted to the summer teaching institutes, but that does not translate as being admitted into the university. That's just a summer program. It's like not camp, but it's like only being accepted into one part of the university, but not being accepted into the university itself. So then the Woody Commission report conclusions concluded that sex barriers to admission to higher education must be removed, right? So all of these sex barriers, this happened in 1970, that says you can't enter because you are a woman, have to be removed. And so when you're thinking about this Woody Commission report conclusions, if they're saying this about single sex colleges or co-educational institutions, you have to start accepting women or African Americans. Think about how this might apply for the transgender case. Sex barriers to admission to higher education must be removed. So the transgender applicant then could say or could use these Woody Commission report conclusions. And then no discrimination by sex in offering educational opportunity, which is another conclusion that a transgender student might be able to use. So here's the judge's ruling in this UVA case, University of Virginia case. We hold, and this is all we hold, that on the facts of this case, these particular plaintiffs have been, until the entry of the order of the district judge, denied their constitutional right to an education equal with that offered men at Charlottesville, and that such discrimination on the basis of sex violates the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. And so this is what the judge is saying. Really pay attention to this. We hold, and this is all we hold. Doesn't necessarily mean that the judge agrees that institutions should become coeducational. The judge is basically saying, according to the law, this sex barrier is preventing someone's constitutional right to an education equal to that offered by men, and that it violates the Equal Protection Clause. Equal Protection Clause does not mean that we're equal. It just means that there should be equal application of the law. And the 14th Amendment is the Citizenship Amendment. So you definitely have every right as a citizen to pursue education equal to that offered men at Charlottesville. And this is all that we hold applies to this case, this college. So anyone who wants to pursue this on a national level would have to address this at individual colleges or by state or by federal. So let's look at the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, which prohibits states from denying any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. The laws of a state must treat an individual in the same manner as others in similar conditions and circumstances. Does not promote equality among individuals. It promotes equal application of the law. Keep that in mind. There's a difference. So as a result of the 14th Amendment, Reconstruction Amendment, adopted July 9, 1868, grants citizenship, and all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the law. So the person who is claiming initially during this time that you cannot keep me from attending college is using the 14th Amendment. They are using it in terms of saying that I am a citizen of the United States and I have these rights as a citizen according to the 14th Amendment, and then you cannot discriminate against me because of the Equal Protection Clause. There has to be equal application of the law. If this gender over here, this person over here, this male over here could attend college and get an education, then as a female, I should be able to do the same. And this is how you want to make sure that you understand how to apply the laws. Because then when you move over into making a case for transgender, they're going to use exactly the same laws as the individuals who use the laws to make or influence one sex colleges or same sex colleges to become coeducational. So the judge had to approve a plan to integrate women into the UVA system. So there was a plan proposed by the UVA Board of Visitors. There was a resolution 1969, and remember, Vassar became coeducational in 1969. And the plan was to begin admitting women on an equal basis with men. And then there was a three-stage change. So a certain number of women were admitted in 1970, then 1971, and then it just became the status quo after that. Okay, so Title 9, 1972 Education Amendment. So this is part of the 1972 Higher Education Act, which prohibits federally funded colleges and universities from discriminating against women. So if you want to get funding from the federal government based upon this Higher Education Act, Title 9, you cannot discriminate against women. So then when you look at the law that was applying to women wanting to get into single sex colleges, then you may also think about it in terms of transgender and transgender applicants using the exact same law. So this was sponsored by Edith Green. She was elected to the 84th Congress. She's considered the mother of higher education. She endorsed legislation to provide students of all economic backgrounds um, opportunity to pursue. So this is where the quote unquote poor student can now go to college. Whereas with Vassar, you had to be among the wealthy elite. With Mount Holyoke, you were part of the middle class. You could still go to college. But now, because of Edith Green, she has made it possible for the non-wealthy and the non-middle class to also go to college, and that's by scholarship. All right, so here's supporting related legislation. So you have Title 4 of the Civil Rights Act, 1964. which prohibits any type of discrimination on the basis of race, color, national origin. Then you have the Women's Educational Equity Act of 1974, which provides federal technical support to remove barriers. So we want to make sure that once we approve of women being able to go to college and be integrated um, into maybe basically creating co-educational institutions, they should be able to pay for it as well, and that's through scholarships, loans, and grants. And then we have the 1973 Section 504, which prohibits any type of disability discrimination. So here's other summaries. So we have age discrimination, 1975, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of age and also provides federal financial assistance. 1976, vocational education. States must affirmatively act to eliminate sex bias, stereotyping, any discrimination in vocational education. And then 1990 prohibits any disability discrimination by public entities. Okay. So Title IX provision is something that you want to be aware of because it's the title. It's that provision in the law that basically suggests you cannot, as an institution, receive federal funding and discriminate based upon sex, race, national origin, etc. So this is a quick screenshot of it, and this is when the president signed it in 1972. And just going to read a little bit of it. So Title IX is a comprehensive federal law that prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex in any federally funded education program or activity. The principal objective of Title IX is to avoid the use of federal money to support sex discrimination in education programs and to provide individual citizens effective protection against those practices. So then this is any institution that receives federal funding. So there may be so then you have to ask the question, what if the institution does not receive federal funding? What if it's a private institution? Could they still discriminate? That's something that you have to think about, maybe have to seek additional counsel on. So Title IX preamble and interpretation. So preamble, no person in the United States shall on the basis of sex be excluded from participating in or be denied the benefits of or be subject to discrimination under any educational program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. So the Title IX also, you usually hear Title IX within the sports context for women. And so that applies to that context as well. So the principal objective is to avoid the use of federal money to support sex discrimination, etc. So here are the federal financial assistance. So any institution that's receiving grants, loans, funds made available for acquisition, construction, renovation, restoration, any scholarships, grants, loans, wages, funds, any institution, say for instance, like Dallas College, that's receiving any grant or loan for any part of this process, they cannot discriminate based upon Title IX. And so the recipients can be educational institutions, institutions for graduate higher education, institutions at the 2-year level, 4-year level, professional education, vocational education. And then it also changed parts of the law that you cannot ask certain pre-admission inquiries. So remember that if you got married, you had to actually quit your job or you were fired. Well, they don't have to. The Title IX prohibits asking marital status of an applicant in terms of determining if they're going to admit the institute. It's not a prerequisite. And then prohibitions relating to marital or parental status. So in that society, Victorian era belief society that kind of spilled over into the 1950s or more, if you got pregnant, childbirth, terminated your pregnancy, anything like that, that could be an exclusion that keeps you out of education. So now Title IX changed all of that. And so access to course offerings. So during the time when colleges were only for men, there were only courses. There were certain courses that only men could take and women could not. And even if it was open to a woman, the men had every right to sit in the seats for the instructor to make them more of a priority over the woman. So access to course offerings for Title IX, a recipient should not provide any course or otherwise carry out any of its education program or actively separately on the basis of sex or require or refuse participation therein. So for instance, there cannot be separation. Here it is, this single course, and only men can learn the majority of the information, and only women can only learn so much of the information. Same thing, the laws changed also for African Americans wanting to enter college as well. And so I don't know if that's a completely separate issue, but it has a lot of segregation implications. So you're gonna do a group exercise in class for all of the face-to-face courses, and that is a group exercise discussion of Harvard Political Review. And your goal is to look for the argument. And you are going to distinguish between yes and no. So, for instance, in that Harvard Political Review handout, uh, what are the yeses? What are the nos? Yeses meaning yes, single-sex colleges are obsolete. Or what are the no's? No, single-sex colleges are not obsolete. You need to be able to know the difference between the different arguments. So that's what we're going to do in class. And that's going to be on the first day. And the second day is you writing a response, responding to the prompt based upon that evidence and creating a argument position. So let's recap the prompt. Women's colleges, once common in the United States, have been going coeducational in increasing numbers in the past 40 years. Many people argue that women's colleges are unnecessary now that all of the major United States colleges and universities are open to women. But others, citing studies that show that graduates of women's colleges are more successful than women who graduate from co-ed colleges, argue that women's colleges still have much to offer. And that's something that you have to think about. So are single-sex colleges obsolete, or do they still provide an important alternative to co-ed colleges? And then support your position with reasons, examples from your own experience, observations, and reading. So really good understanding of this prompt. So then these are argument strategies that you should consider based upon the handouts that you have access to already. And so now we want to make a case for transgender. And so let's look at Wellesley College mission and gender policy that they have already changed. And so it's basically a setup of just history information on this, and then how they have switched their policy. They still want to remain a single sex college, but they have changed their policy, the gender policy, to accept transgender students. So let's just read it here. In March 2015, our Board of Trustees voted to update our admission policy to provide clarity for transgender and non-binary students who would like to apply for admission. Our trustees and campus community engaged in a wide-ranging, respectful, and thoughtful discussion about what it means to be a women's college in an era of changing understanding of gender identity. It is clear that the concept of a women's college and the reasons for having one are as relevant today as they were at our charter date in 1870. Wellesley's mission to provide an excellent education to women who will make a difference in the world is only strengthened by broadening our understanding of what it means to be a woman and fostering an inclusive community of women who are prepared for a rigorous academic environment that challenges them to achieve. So this is all set up of what they're now going to tell you, that they have switched their policy or have changed their policy. Wellesley will consider for admission any applicant who lives as a woman and consistently identifies as a woman. Therefore, candidates assigned male at birth who identify as women are eligible to apply for admission. So they're talking about identification purposes. The college also accepts applications from those who were assigned female at birth, identify as non-binary, and who feel they belong in our community of women. Those assigned female at birth who identify as men are not eligible for consideration for admission. So you could challenge what Wellesley is suggesting here. It's almost like they're changing how females should be interpreted, right? And it's based upon identification. So it's how you identify yourself. In some cases, you may have to supply medical documentation or however way they would have you to do it. But they are basically saying that if you live as a woman and consistently identify as a woman, you don't change the way you think, right? You identify as a woman, and even if you were assigned male at birth, but you identify as a woman, you are eligible for admission. But if you were assigned female at birth, but you identify as a man, then you are not eligible for even consideration. So that's really thinking about the transgender argument. So let's look at gender identity terms. So gender, a system of classification describing attributes commonly associated with maleness or femaleness. Sexual orientation, the romantic and sexual attraction a person feels to a particular gender or genders. Perceived gender, what another person assumes one's gender is in a given interaction. Transgender, a generally accepted umbrella term describing anyone who exhibits characteristics of a gender that does not match one's apparent or actual physical sex. And then transition, the process of changing one's presentation or expression to align with one's gender identity. And I think for this paper, you only really need to quote one source, but this gives you an idea of different types of sources that you could quote in terms of the transgender uh, required source. So then you would have a reading summary. You choose a required source, take one of the sources, and create a reading summary. Remember, the more you do with your reading summary, you can also use within your individual papers. So the more you get done, it makes it easier for you to finish that paper. And then, of course, you will have peer review for face-to-face classes. So it will be based upon the sentence, phrase, word thinking routine, which is a self-assessment. And then the self-assessment guidelines are just what is your argumentative thesis statement, what is your position, what is your topic sentence that supports your thesis. So in other words, this self-assessment is your ability to look at your own paper and be able to identify what your own thesis is and what your own topic sentences are. What is a claim you use from a required source? The claim should support your position. What is a counterclaim you use from a required source? The counterclaim should oppose the claim and your position. What is your use of supporting evidence? How does it work to support your position or oppose your position? What type of evidence is it? And then what is your overall rebuttal to your position? How do you sustain your position by the end of your paper? So remember, this is still your argument. And if you end on a different argument, you have definitely lost your argument. So this is self-assessment guidelines. All right. So lastly, all sources required for the formal research paper on single-sex colleges are housed on eCampus, and the handouts are what you are receiving in terms of hyperlinks. There will be some handouts that I bring to class. So this is the formal research paper lectures on the topic of single-sex colleges and making a case for transgender.